Yeah, totally. Or if somebody just says something incorrect in an issue, you can't wait. You need to
Yeah.
correct that right then.
It's the
Right.
internet, man.
Right.
Like somebody
Right
said
now.
something wrong on the internet. I gotta go fix it.
You can't wait until later. That has to happen right now.
Good Lord, no.
Hey everybody, welcome to Front End Fire, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the latest and the greatest in the front end world. I am your host today, TJ Van Tol. I have Jack Harrington with me
Hello.
and Paige Niedringhaus.
Hey everyone.
And today is a special episode. We have some special guests. We have some announcements. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of a big deal. So I want to welcome to the show Burke Holland and Harald Kirschner. Hopefully I got your last name there correctly, but welcome to the show, guys.
Hey all.
Burke, you muted
you're
yourself.
on
Burke,
mute.
you mute yourself.
Yeah.
Classic.
Classic error. I didn't realize I was supposed to have my last name on my lower third. I apologize. I'm just Burke. But there
you're good.
are no other Burks, so I think we're good to go. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so why don't we have you guys just introduce yourselves first, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do at Microsoft, all those good sorts of things. And Burke, you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Burke, and I'm a developer advocate at Microsoft, and I work on the Visual Studio Code team. So my team is primarily responsible for the social stuff that you see on Twitter and some of our blog posts. We do some of that, our YouTube channel, and our vibrant TikTok account. So like and subscribe and all of that good stuff. We drop a lot of VS Code tips there, right? We try to make the best use of your time, especially on short form video, because we know you need to get to that next clip of, Subway Surfer or whatever. So just good good useful VS Code tips.
It actually is a pretty good format for quick VS Code tips. They fit nicely into the TikTok window. So I'll +1 that.
Thank you, TJ.
Yeah. And Harold, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Harald Kirschner, also on the VS Code team, product managers, talking lots to users, triaging issues, landing code, sorry about that, and just, staying on top of all the things that need to happen to ship product. But yeah, talking to many customers and just being out in the ecosystem to keep learning. That's the new challenge with AI. So I've been working on VS Code for like 4 years, and before that, Firefox DevTools. So worked on Firefox Quantum and Firefox Profiler performance tooling. So lots of fun stuff there as well.
Huh. I should have worn my Firefox shirt today. I'm a big fan. So we are here for some announcements. We have some really cool VS Code and GitHub Copilot announcements, and we are going to go through those today. But first, I just want to level set. I'm going to ask Burke, for the couple people that are not familiar with GitHub Copilot, can you kind of set the stage for us? The TLDR, what is GitHub Copilot? Why would people care about it or want to use it?
Sure. So I think at this point, everybody's probably at least heard the word Copilot, although it probably means something different depending on who you are and what you spend your day doing. But for developers, when we say GitHub Copilot, we're primarily talking about the AI experience that you find in your editor, so in Visual Studio Code. And that is, it comes in a variety of forms, but it's completions. So, what we call ghost text. So you'll be typing and it'll sort of complete for you. That's called ghost text. That's Copilot. Inline chat, so you can, I don't know if people know this, but you can Control I in Visual Studio Code and you can ask a question or ask for code and it will do that. And then, of course, like the chat experience that Chat GPT is sort of like formalized as being the way that humans interact with an AI, which now occurs in the sidebar. And so asking questions about your code and now being able to also have the AI edit your code. Now, we should clarify here. Yes, we should clarify that when we say GitHub Copilot, we talk about it from a VS Code perspective, but it also includes features on github.com, which includes things like knowledge bases, chat that's available on .com, and some of the stuff that we'll be announcing as well. So it is a subscription available for free, but also with items that occur in your editor and outside of your editor throughout the developer lifecycle. Harold,
Cool.
Anything you want to clarify there?
Not to mention at all.
Did it do it justice?
It's also even on GitHub Mobile. So if you have the mobile app, there's also your little
Sure.
GitHub.
Do y'all spend a lot
I
of
didn't
time?
even know that there was a GitHub mobile.
There is. I have it because every time I click on a link, it pulls up the mobile app, and I forget it's there until I click on the link.
Until you do that, and you're like, "Hey, whoa, that is not what I wanted." Okay.
Whoa, there is an app. That's right.
Well, yeah, interesting. Okay.
It's fast. That's what
What
I
does
like
it
about
do?
it.
I'm just curious. Like, what is it?
It lists issues. That's like the main purpose. Just the project management bits, and you can open PRs and review as well if you feel adventurous on mobile.
Nice.
And then
Yeah, I can imagine.
with Copilot, some of that becomes natural language, so that's kind of more fun. Even just talking about your issues and going through the comments, maybe doing some triaging, just talking to your phone. So there's some cool use cases.
Yeah,
Our
I can't.
VS Code team uses GitHub like intensively, so I like the app because it's quick in the sense that I need to respond to something in GitHub and I can just pull it up and do it fast. It's just faster than the web experience. Sorry, Paige.
I can't say that I've ever thought that I wanted to triage anything on GitHub on my phone. but maybe if, like you said, if there's natural language processing and it's more voice driven, that would be better.
Yeah, I don't know. Being on like the end of like issues on OSS, you're out at like grocery shopping or whatever, and somebody pings you with an issue, and it's like clearly they're just using it wrong or something like that. It'd be really nice to be able to just like, hey, just FYI, like this is not like a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
or if somebody just says something incorrect in an issue, you can't wait. You need to correct that right then.
It's the internet, man.
Right.
Like somebody said something wrong on the internet. I gotta go fix it.
You can't wait until later. That has to happen right now.
Good Lord, no.
Yeah. Drop the groceries. We got more important things to
This guy on the internet said. Okay.
All right. So I think that's a good level set for what GitHub Copilot is, and I think it leads nicely into these announcements. So why don't we just do it? We'll just get into the fun stuff, the reason that we're here today. So item 1, I've got this bulleted list here, and the first thing is that agent mode is now available for all users in VS Code. So you ask Copilot, you can ask Copilot to make a new application or a complex change. Agent mode will edit all the files needed, run tester commands, and guide you through the reasoning. So this is super exciting because I mean, agents are all the craze nowadays, but having this in VS Code directly with GitHub Copilot is really, really cool. So do you want to talk a little bit more about what agent mode can do and how you use it?
Harold, do you want to take that one?
Oh, I got the pitch. So yeah, I think it's going through the evolution of like ghost text to having a chat in the panel and then finally being able to like pull in code. When the first time we showed people chat in VS Code was like, but it doesn't edit the code. Like I ask it to do something and then it just gives you a code block. So, and that's basically what agent mode suddenly feels like. You tell it to do something and it will do it. And that's the short of it of agent mode. And it challenges a bit how people think about AI and steering it, because with agent mode, it will have access to the terminal. It will be able to read files on its own. It will be able to after it edits files, actually check for errors. So there's a lot more iterative loops happening, which you can consider in your prompting. You can finally tell it, go into my tests, run them, check for errors, and fix them and try again. So it goes suddenly out and goes into this loop. And that's where it becomes more autonomous, with developers still in the pilot seat, so to speak, because you can always still pause and say like, no, that was a wrong tool, use a different tool. And that's really what makes agent mode so interesting. Like it's in your editor, you see the output and the inputs of what's happening. It's easier to review. You can also go full vibe coding and ignore what it outputs and edits and just go for like, does it look nice? So there's a spectrum. I think that's where agent mode is interesting, how these tools now evolve from agentic, yes, the right button, to give you, depending on how you want to work, give you the right level of control. Yeah, but that's agent mode in a nutshell, I think.
You can even run stuff in the terminal, right? It can actually say, okay, I'm going to go and I need this library for whatever you want, and I'll go add that.
Yeah, that's
exactly right.
Yeah.
And it will read the terminal output, right? So if the command fails because AIs make mistakes, then it will see that and it will try to adjust, right? Because if it knows that it failed, then it can make sort of a better decision and fix its own mistakes. I think Harold's explanation is really good. If you break it down into like a practical use case, something that I was working through earlier that I thought was just really interesting for agent mode is that like in chat, like say you had a project you needed to install something like Tailwind CSS. Well, if you told a chat to do that in chat, there's sort of 3 modes in GitHub Copilot now. If you click on the little drop down, there will be an ask, which is chat, edits, which I'll talk about in a second, and agents. There's 3 modes. So in chat mode, what will happen is the model will try to answer you just based on what it knows, right? And that will be whatever file you currently have open and whatever prompt you put in. So if your prompt is install Tailwind CSS and you don't provide it any other context like an open file, then it will give you back an answer that's just sort of generic. For edits, it will do the same thing, except for that it will try to go ahead and modify any files that you need. So for Tailwind, you're going to need to update like for Astro, you'll need to update the config. You'll need to add a global CSS file, and you'll need to pull that into your index file. Okay. In agent mode, though, things get quite a bit more interesting. So in agent mode, you're not providing it any context, and you say install Tailwind CSS, and the first thing, it's going to act more like a human. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, I need to know what kind of project this is. So it's going to look in your package JSON and see, okay, this is an Astro project. It's using nanostores. It's using Preact, whatever relevant information that it needs. And then it's going to try to provide the answer based on when it feels like it has enough context. The first thing it's going to do is tell you need to install the NPM package. So it's going to give you that terminal command. And it's going to ask you if it can run the terminal command, because for obvious reasons, we don't want it running terminal commands just willy-nilly. And so, and by the way, if it runs in the background and it needs a terminal command, it will come back and tell you. And so you continue on, and then it just kind of continues this process until it feels like it has implemented Tailwind. There are no errors in the problems view, and it's ready for you. It thinks that everything is ready and good to go. So it's quite a difference between sort of like a simple chat back and forth and an autonomous thing that functions as if you told a dev somewhere, go do this thing, and didn't give it a ton of extra information.
Well, when you're doing something like this, when you're giving it instructions, is it also looking at your existing code to kind of learn this is how your team does certain things, like all constants are uppercase with underscores in between them, or I see that they're using a certain style of, model view controller or whatever, so that it's also not only, or they're using PNPM instead of NPM for installing packages. Is it also taking all of that into account as it's trying to write new code for you?
Yeah, I think that's where these agents shine when they sit in your editor versus like using ChatGPT or Cloud Desktop. So like, how do I implement Tailwind? It's like, in general, Tailwind is installed by running this. And I was like, wait, but I'm having different
I'm not
things.
using Python. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm using Python. So you end up a lot of correction or you have to dump all this knowledge up front. Like, I'm working on this and that. So that's where, being in VS Code, we do front load some of these kind of project information we have, often around dependencies, and language versions is a big one, because we're VS Code. We know which languages are running currently that we're actually inspecting. But in many cases, it will be highly based on what you have initially attached to it. So that's one of the best practices to, like, if you want to have it follow specific standards, have those files attached, because that's what it kind of bases its styles on. Like, how do you format your files? How do you structure your code? Is it more modular? Is it like everything asynchronous? But the biggest, I think, recommendation we have is bringing in custom instructions. And those exist in all editors. It's cursor rules, it's client rules, it's Copilot instructions for Copilot. And they often can be really short. It's just, this is the stack I'm working on. And then as soon as AI makes a mistake in, like, oh, using the wrong test library, or you're not writing your asserts in a way I like them, you just add it into custom instructions and you keep moving on, and you don't think about that mistake anymore, because the next time those instructions will be always added for you in a chat conversation or an agent conversation, so the agent knows. So it's usually the combination of what we can tell up front about your project, then what you layer on top with instructions, and then anything that gleams from your code. And that can lead to, like, that's the biggest thing with AI. It will write code as good as you write code that you gave it to edit, right? So if it's, and then people are really upset with AI, but they're mostly upset with themselves sometimes, or with the intersection of the code they wrote and the training data and the lack of prompting in between that makes a difference. So that's how it knows, right?
Is there a hierarchy to these
The top pile is always what you tell AI in a moment. That's your prompt, right? And then we have something called prompt files where it makes it more reusable that you can attach. Those kind of sitting underneath. They could give it like domain specific knowledge, like this is how we write front end code, or this is how we do our database query if you work on a query. And then underneath there's the Copilot instructions, which are kind of project wide. And then underneath that there's like our general like base information on the project and what else you're working on. And then on top of that, what Burke mentioned, the first thing the agent usually does is go out and gather context to make a plan, right? And that's kind of where it sees like, oh, I don't know which actual dependencies you have, so I'm going to look at the package.json. Or I see you want to implement Tailwind. Let's look at your existing Tailwind configuration, which classes you already have. Like we can't pull everything from the project. So that's where agent mode is really shining. That's where it's hard to go away to ask or edits again after you use agent mode, because it does so much for you. It's like, oh, I missed to attach my Tailwind config, of course. And then it's like, agent will just do it for you. Okay.
And it's a really good idea just before you go off and jump into agent mode, and it sounds awesome. Like, just make sure that you're really good with Git. And before you actually start, like, like having it do all this stuff for you, just, make sure that you're in like a good committed space. And then if it does some crazy stuff, you can just, reset. You're good to go.
In your agent, are there ways to easily roll back? Like if you tell the agent to do something, like presumably it's going to prompt me if I want to accept, but let's say I screw it up, I accept it and it like my app crashes. Is there just easy ways to head back?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different mechanisms we give you to give you control over this. So the one that's kind of in your face is that as agent mode creates or changes files, it puts them in this like working set in the chat. And when it's done, you can sort of see everything that's been changed, and it's changed, but it's not saved, right? So what you can then do is that you can then save it to see if it actually worked. And it's changed and it's saved, and this is kind of confusing, but it's not kept at this point. So at this point, there's an undo button that you can say, and you can actually say undo at this point, and it will just completely undo all of the changes that it just made. If you save everything and it's broken. This is the flow that I use because I don't actually want to accept the changes until I can see that it looks good to me and it works. I verify that it works. But in agent mode, you can go through many iterations and in edits as well. And you can go back through and do revisionist history. So you can go back and just delete a chat message. And when you do that, it rolls back to that specific point in time, right? So it basically rolls back your history to where you were at that specific chat message. Harald, I feel like there's another one that I'm missing here because I know we've added some additional controls based on feedback for reverting.
There's big undo redo buttons at the top.
There we go.
Which in user testing people keep missing. So I think there's more UX work to be done. But that's I think big. It's like nothing is changed. There's always a keep and undo button in the end. And there is an option to autosave, especially for front-end development, where you watch your server changes and things will just show. It makes a really nice front-end development. And you still need to keep in the end. So you can have a longer agent session and keep editing. What's tricky now, I think, where you have to, that's more of a gotcha with terminal commands. Of course, there could be changes. There are not edits done by the agent. So I think no AI tool has figured that out. So I think, as Jack said, like Git is still your friend to revert back, because like not everything right now the agent is really aware of what it changed, because a terminal command might add a new dependency or change some versioning in the package.json, so it gets a little bit trickier to undo fully. So there's still the art of making sure everything you edited is ending in the state that you like it, and then you have a good kind of checkpoint to continue working from.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's pretty easy with any agent to get into a state where everything works really good and it's almost there, and so you iterate, and then it's kind of like a drawing that you touched too much and it's no longer pretty. It's just a mess, and you want to get out and you can't at that point. It's too much of a mess. And so, as Harald said, this being really disciplined about moving in like discrete chunks and saving and committing doesn't change. That's still super important. You can still hurt yourself pretty good with an AI.
Old school developer workflow, in the new school. But that's fine.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a brave new world, but some of our skills are still going to be actually useful. So source control, a lot of this stuff is still, you don't have to throw all of your skills away when you go over to an agent.
It's kind of like when we were talking about vibe coding in a previous episode. It's like, get it to the place where it works, but is not pretty. Commit that code and then go mad and let it do whatever it's going to do, because you always know you can revert and the functionality is still there, even if you don't have all the styling that you as you went too far off the rails.
Yeah. You need to have a backstop of some sort.
There's even cool automation people do, like telling the agent to do a git commit in the end when it's done, or a git stash or something. So you can even work with the agent, like have custom instructions in place that, like, once it completes a big task, it just commits it. So you have a checkpoint, and then you can work from there. Like, is that the thing I wanted? Do I revert it? Do I review in Git? That always depends, like, how people like to review as well. Because with agent, it's nice to have the agent do the work and then jump into the code and do some polishing. So part of the changes will come from the agent, part of the changes will come from you. Some will be auto-completed by Copilot as you type. But in the end, it's a combination of many different things that come together that still need to be reviewed in combination.
I should also add as a pro tip, this has nothing to do with AI, but if you're in Visual Studio Code and you realize that you're in a state, well, you've lost work, or you're just in a state and you didn't get correctly, right, or responsibly, which everyone does. There's a timeline view in the Explorer, and we save for you every so often, almost like a local source control, changes to your files, and you can just go back through there. So there's nothing to do with AI, right? It's just a VS Code tip in general. But if you ever find yourself in that state, just look for the timeline view. There's a great chance we saved it for you, 2.5 minutes ago, and you can just roll back to that.
Is there a TikTok video for that?
I literally never knew this existed.
Yeah, this is one of the greatest. It'd save you, right? Because we've all done this where we're like, oh no, did I just lose 500 lines? No, I did not lose 4 hours just now.
Wow. Burke, you have to send me a link for that.
Yeah,
and we'll make sure to get it in the show notes so people can just head down to their notes and
see. That's the kind of stuff you get on the VS Code TikTok,
Yeah,
you already know.
You're just building the subscribers.
Also follow us on Twitter.
Correct. All right. So announcement number 2 is MCP support for agent mode. So allowing you to easily have context tools and services while you're building your application with GitHub Copilot. So you want to give us the short version of this? We've talked about MCP a lot on this show, so I think people are familiar with the basics of what it is, but I'm guessing most people listening to this haven't actually dove into using this yet, right? Like building your own server or even using a server. So you want to go over what is now available in VS Code for people to try out and use these things?
Yeah. So I've been ramping up in this space for a while. So it's hard for me to do the pitch, but it's USB-C for the AI, basically. Plug in anything. MCP servers are just really simple interfaces that connect your AI agent to any context or tools outside of the agent that would otherwise not have access. Some of it already worked before with VS Code extensions, but again, that only works then in VS Code extensions. So MCP is a new glue to make that all happen. And it's very simple and it's very vibrant. As I talked about, it's been really exploding in the past weeks on interest. And I saw it early on and people are still very confused, what is this and how do I get value out of it? And when I talk even now to teams and developers, there's something there that's really exciting and solves a really important problem, but it still has to evolve to a level of usability and to a level of maturity in an ecosystem to really deliver. So that's the exciting part. We're very early, and we're just now. It's 3 weeks now in Insiders. So that's been the kind of the journey we've been on so far. But what MCP does, you install, as you have a JSON file that you configure your MCP server in, and that's just the executable that somebody put on the internet that you will execute on your local machine that hopefully you trust.
Fingers crossed.
Nothing can go wrong.
Who knows?
And that's the exciting bit. More official MCP servers come out now versus the community maintained, somebody being excited about an idea and then the company saying, oh, that's actually a useful tool to provide. So there's more of that kind of trust layer being built out. But then MCP server now lives in VS Code, and VS Code knows about it, and it can see its tools. And those tools are then available in agent mode to execute. But Burke probably has a cool example.
The one that we generally use is when I talked about Copilot and not knowing about Tailwind, right? It would be really nice if it could do a search the internet and get some results back, right? And so there's a community Perplexity MCP server. And for those who don't know, Perplexity is sort of an AI-powered search where you put in your search query and it will search across search results and then aggregate you and give you an answer. So a great example of this is I'm at the auto parts store and I need a Torx bit for a seatbelt on a 2015 Chrysler Town and Country. Okay, you can find that on Google, but you're going to have to go to a site, click past some ads, right? It's going to be a pain. Perplexity, though, if you ask it, it will go out, read YouTube video comments, because as Paige, as you pointed out, that's where people are consuming, right? So the answer is actually embedded in a YouTube video somewhere, and I assume it reads captions anyway. And it just came back and said you need a TX 50. And so I actually bought bits on either side because I didn't trust it, but it was in fact a 50. It was correct. And so you can use this so the agent now has access to this tool. So when you install the Perplexity MCP server, you can either tell the agent specifically, you can be specific about it. You can say install Tailwind CSS, use Ask Perplexity, I believe is the name of it. But the agent knows about the tools and it will actually decide to use the tool on its own. And I don't know, Harald, if we have guidance on this. I generally find that sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's good to be specific. But in that case, it will go out, ask Perplexity. Perplexity will reply with the answer, and then it will use that in its response to you so that it's actually, we're linking multiple tools together, right? Because otherwise you're going out and doing that. And another great example would be like the Postgres MCP server. Right, that's a great one. And so if you have a database, you're building an application where your application doesn't know anything about your database. It doesn't have the first clue. And the only way for it to know would be for you to write some sort of API between VS Code and your Postgres database. Nobody wants to do that. And so the MCP server just provides a read-only interface. And if the agent has questions about your database, it can literally just ask the database, hey, what's the structure of the users table, right? And then it's not like fabricating fields for your interfaces or your ORM that just don't exist because it doesn't know about the database. So those are probably two really good examples. I think the possibilities here are truly endless. The example that we did at the MVP Summit last week was using Apple. So there's an Apple Shortcuts one, which people can play with. But essentially, you can get the agent to call an Apple shortcut. And as you know, Apple shortcuts can do like literally anything. Like you can turn your lights on and off if you have, right. And so you can literally tell Copilot like, hey, when you're done, you can use a custom instruction that says, hey, anytime you're done with a task in agent mode, like toggle the lights in my office on and off and reference a specific shortcut. And it can do that, right? And so at this point, agent mode, MCP allows agent mode to like reach outside of the digital world into the physical one, which is crazy to me. But yeah, the possibilities are endless. It's not just about context and talking to databases or searching the internet. It's about literally giving Copilot access to any tool it might need to do a job.
So there's two different workflows in my mind. There's one, the casual user just has some server that already exists that they want to use, like the Postgres example would be an example of that. If I wanted to do that today, what is my workflow like? Am I installing this like it's an extension? Am I registering it? What specific steps am I taking to actually use this thing?
Yeah, I think eventually it should be an extension. Like that's what we're working towards. Like it should be just as easy as putting Postgres into an extension search and then you install it. And that's, hopefully happening soon as we figure out like what is this official registry thing that everybody is talking about. So the current one is you still find the Postgres SQL server, and there's an OpenPR soon to be merged that adds actually an install in VS Code button on these pages. So we're trying to bring that. Everybody's like, for Claude, like copy this JSON around, and we want to, yes, but why not just make it one click? So hopefully these become one click. So one click, and you have Postgres, and you choose like, do you want this configured for myself in my user config, or you want this in my current workspace? So that's the one. And then you have it, and then you can still configure which database. And then we actually have some input systems, input variables. So you don't have to hard code it in your config, because it might change depending on which port you have on your system, what users run on. So you can even have this something you configure on kind of first run to change it. So we're kind of exploring how to make this easier to configure in the long run, so you don't have API keys hard coded in your JSON configs and all these issues we've seen in the wild. So there's a lot of room there. But then it basically shows up in your tools dropdown in agent mode, and you can even pick, like, I'm not working in database right now, I don't need this tool, so you can toggle it off. And as you switch over to work on databases, you toggle it on, and it just lights up.
I mean, honestly, even if it's a couple click experience, it's probably better than what exists right now, because as someone who's been experimenting in this world, this is the Wild West. I think you alluded to this earlier. But I mean, there's two ways you can view that. One is, well, this is really hard, but you can also see it as an opportunity. There's tons of interest in this. It's just the tooling is just trying to keep up with the interest and trying to make it smoother than filling out JSON config files in some weird undocumented format.
Yeah, it will definitely get better. These are early days. Jack's got a great video about MCP, which I watched when I was trying to get up to speed on MCP. I would recommend everybody watch that.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, we've the integration in Visual Studio Code, as Harald was talking about. We try to address some of the harder problems. Like one of the downsides right now is security that's still being worked out. And so in a lot of these ones, they want you to put your API key in a JSON file. And that's super dangerous, right? Like that's exactly how you accidentally check it into source control. And then, you end up as a horror story on social media, right? And everybody's worried about that. I'm worried about that. And so we have this concept of inputs where we basically will ask you, when you start the server, if you need a key, we'll ask you for it. And via an interface, and when you paste it in, we will encrypt that and store it locally and pass it to the MCP server in a secure way, right? So your key, you don't run the risk. We don't want to put you in a position where you're really going to hurt yourself, but we want you to be able to use the latest and greatest stuff. And so we're thinking through all of that at the moment, making this as easy as possible and as secure as possible.
Yeah, now you're making me self-conscious, because when I was playing around this today, I now have so many keys and just random JSON files on my computer. And
we all do, yeah.
Yeah, it's hopefully none of them end up in source control or synced, but I don't know.
So if I can get into the weeds for a second. So there's two different ways to do the whole MCP thing currently. One is via doing a command locally. It's standard IO mode. And then the other is actually accessing a remote server using server sent events, or SSE mode. Does the new the VS Code GA release support both of those?
Yes, we do.
Awesome.
We are working on the new way. So the spec just got updated last week.
Right, the stateless way.
Yeah, streaming HTTP. So that's on our list for this iteration, which means this month, I guess. Yes. So we have what date is it?
Yeah.
What date is it today? Actually,
it's Friday when this comes out, so people will be hearing this.
Happy Friday!
Yeah.
All. So yeah, this is on the list. We have the spec just got updated. There's some authentication is now stable and a few other things. So we want to make that happen. We have ideas to make authentication better. It's very simple with OAuth right now. It requires a lot of kind of developer mental energy to get this right and not wrong, and exchange the wrong token and put it in the wrong place. So there's a lot more work to do on the spec, but it's a really collaborative space, and everybody's kind of open to make this, to move the spec forward and make it scale. I think that's the biggest part. The new spec parts are really getting meaning to aim, getting this out into like the general space of like how MCPs work and like larger AI systems that don't require you to install some random executable, but making it work, like point it at Perplexity and it discovers that there's an MCP endpoint. So I think that's really exciting, where you can still have that local, very organic growth on like the developer machine. Like I have a problem and it can be an MCP server, which is now every problem. I'm looking at our backlog, like that can be an MCP server, and that can be an MCP, and that can be just, I don't need to product manage anymore. I just make MCP servers. So that's
Everything's an MCP
solves
server.
your,
You just ask the agent to make the MCP servers for you. You know,
yes, that's
we
one to
actually-
build. Yeah.
So Harold, we did this. Harold made an MC. So, but prior to this coming out, we need to go and send PRs to these different MCP servers to add the VS Code install buttons and then manual installation steps. And there's a lot of them. And so Harold actually wrote an MCP server. And so what we did was when we pull those, we pass it to the MCP server, and the MCP server knows about how to compose a Visual Studio Code install button. It knows about manual install steps. And so we just keep that thing up to date. And then the agent is actually the one that goes and updates the READMEs, right? And then you double check it and submit the PR, right? And so we're at literally everything is we had an MCP server to send PRs for MCP servers. It's
Great.
MCP servers all the way down.
I heard you like MCP servers, yeah.
Yeah.
Dog fooding to the max.
Yeah.
All right. So the third thing on our list is you have a new code complete model, and there is something called next edit suggestions. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I could talk about the code complete model a little bit, and I'll pass it to Harold to talk about next edit suggestions, which is that's going to be a popular one. So the code complete model is when I was talking earlier, I said ghost text, literally the auto completion, and this is what people still use this the most. Most developers who use AI will tell you this is what they use the most, right? Because it's in the flow with you. If you think about it as a dev, you want to stay in the flow, right? And even when you're in chat or agent mode, you're out of the flow, right? Ideally, you want to stay in the code. And so anything that can come into the flow state with you is pretty remarkable. And so that's what the completions do. So the new completions model prior to up until a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, we were using essentially GPT-3.5 Turbo as the completions model, and prior to that Codex, right? And so the problem with these large language models is that, and I didn't know this until I worked on this specific project, was that they're actually only trained on between 2 to 5 languages, right? So they know Python really, really well because they're literally built in Python. They know JavaScript really, really well, right? They're going to know, I'm trying to think of other ones they're going to know, right? The big ones, they're just going to know really, really well. But if you are working in a language like, say, maybe C#, they may not know as much because they actually weren't trained on C#, right? They've seen it before, but they weren't trained specifically on it. So your mileage may vary. You may find that it doesn't actually use the latest language constructs, right? Or it just frequently suggests wrong things. The new completions model is called GPT-4o Copilot. That's the name of it. And it's trained on 32 languages, I think, or somewhere around that number, which makes it quite unique because that means when it's writing things like Clojure, it knows what Clojure is. It was specifically trained on Clojure. It's not guessing based on random Clojure code it's seen before, right? And the second thing that we did with this model is that we drastically increased the speed. So ghost text has always been pretty fast, but there's a little bit of a delay, and that adds up if you add it up throughout the day. And so what we did is it's much faster now in the sense that it will almost be instantaneous. I almost couldn't get through that word. So we removed. I'm buffering. We've removed the delay.
You're coining instantaneous. That's,
that's not a word. It doesn't work
Actually
that
good.
way.
I like that.
Save that for your TikTok channel.
Okay.
And then prior, we used to want you to hit enter, right? Basically to show your intent, right? And then completions would kick in, and we don't do that anymore. We sort of just wait until, a good time. And then, so like if you get to the end of a line and we see like you're going to need 3 lines directly below that, we suggest those automatically. We don't wait for you to press enter because we've seen that it's just more helpful for people if you're more proactive with that. So that's the new completions model. People can use this today. And in fact, if you go up to your little Copilot icon in your title bar, there's a little change completions model menu in there. And if you click on that, I believe you can actually stay on our model, which we're constantly updating, right? So the model is being updated and we put out new versions of it, and you can stay on sort of our latest model release via that menu if you would like to.
Nice. Yeah, I've been playing with this since we talked about it and trying it out, trying to get a sense of how it is. And it's very instantaneous. I will give you that.
Instantaneous. We should have called it instantaneous completion.
It's really good. Yeah, no. And some of the UI, like I've done work with other VS Code-ish, built on VS Code vendors. And there's like a one where it kind of gives you this kind of right angle, like a return thing, and it says, "Ooh, I'm gonna drop that in there for you," and it's just such a slick UI. It just like, oh wow, that is really nice. So I've been impressed with it, really.
Yeah, you must be seeing the next edit suggestion.
Oh yeah, that's a good segue.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah,
okay, so that's that then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's basically ghost text. The OG was just like after your cursor, and we kind of continue your thought. The next edit suggestion is kind of two things. One, it knows kind of understands what you're working on. Like, what is your corpus of work right now? You did a few edits here, you added a new property here, so it kind of gets a sense like, oh, you're working on like adding a new field. So I guess the next thing is I'm going to add validation, or like you probably want to add this to the UI. So it figures out your next tab should lead you down here. So it kind of moves your cursor to the next logical step, which already helps to stay in the flow, because you have to figure out like, oh wait, where do I? Oh yeah, this is it, right? So Copilot already gives you this mental bridge to where to work on, and then if your cursor's over there, it will actually tell you like what to add. So that next edit suggestion will show you like, oh, validation needs to go here, and then the property needs to go to the front end over here. So you just end up accepting the next location with tab, accepting that suggestion with tab, going to the next location with tab, accepting that suggestion with tab. So tap, 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 tap. That's the best experience, I think, from flow perspective, where like, and it's really easy to review. There's like agent mode, where it's like, here's 5 files edited to implement this feature. NES allows you to keep this flow state of like, yeah, that looks reasonable. That's validation. Like, oh, that looks right. That's the front end I wanted, or not, and you tweak it. But it allows you to stay on this code flow without necessarily thinking about prompting or how would you describe this to AI. You can still do that. You can still like enter comments like, I want to add validation here, and then it will do that for you. But NES is just this flow state that extends ghost text.
So I'm kind of curious, does it learn from me as I'm working with it more? Like, does it learn my preferences and the way that I do things, or?
There's no active memory right now.
Okay.
It's something we're exploring across like all features. Like, how can you, if you correct AI, how can we bring this back into something like I'll not do it again. But right now it's really just like, it's looking at your like history from the last few edits.
Oh, so it kind of does in a way.
Yeah, more kind of temporary from what you're working on. Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about flow, because as I've been using these tools more, when you do rely on the agent and you kind of let the agent just totally take the wheel, you can do some cool things, but sometimes at the end of that process, you have to take a step back and go like, whoa, okay, now what did it do? How do I reconcile this? How do I get ready to commit to my production database? And when you're kind of tabbing and ghost texting through, you still feel like you're kind of the one driving the car in a way. Like you're in context, you know what's being added where, and it makes those next steps a little bit easier. Like, okay, well, I know what files I've been in, I know what I've done. It makes it easier for me to then, commit it or do my testing flow or whatever I need to do next. And so there's kind of a trade-off. It's like we're learning the new way to approach having these tools available to us and just coming up with something that makes sense for our workflows.
I should add, Jack, you can try, if you're in Insiders, so there's 2 versions of VS Code for people who don't know. There's the blue one, which we call stable, and then there's one called Insiders, which is green. And Insiders, you would have had all of this stuff months ago. So if you want the latest and greatest, get on Insiders, and there's a setting you can look for, Jack, called temporal context. And this is something that we're experimenting with. Like, can we give Copilot a memory so that it knows about things that interactions that you've recently had, whether or not you discarded them? Because a lot of times you need it to know what happened 15 minutes ago because it's relevant now, and you don't want to have to go back and explain everything all over again. So we're looking at these problems. We're trying to solve these problems. And if for listeners, if you want to play with this stuff, you can get VS Code Insiders today, and all of that will be available to you. We don't hold anything back.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing is sometimes it's just wildly off. And this happens across all the editors. That's not a VS Code particular thing. Sometimes it's just like, what the heck are you talking about? And the ability to like say, oh, it wasn't that, right? Whatever you did there, it'd be nice for it to know, like, don't go that way with it.
Hey everybody, TJ coming in here from the future. We ended up having to wrap up our conversation with Burke and Harald there. They had to take off. But before they left, they did want to participate in our What's Making Us Happy segment that we run at the end of each of our episodes. So what you're about to hear is Burke and Harald talking about what is making them happy. And then Jack, Paige, and I stick around to cover what is making us happy. So that's what you're about to hear. And let's go ahead and hear that.
Now, wait a minute. Don't y'all do like a thing that we love? Because I've been thinking about this.
Okay. Let's do it real
45
fast.
minutes, and
Yes.
I want to show it to you. Yeah.
Let's do it fast. Let's go.
Yeah, go lightning round, Burke. Let's hear it.
So I have this new webcam. It's called the
Insta360.
yes. It's called the Insta, and it follows you. Look at this.
It's amazing.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
It's like a company conference room camera, but it's like
Or-
$200. It's super affordable. I am super impressed with this little thing. Jack, I take it you have one?
Yeah, that's up on my other monitor. I've got that one. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, sometimes it's annoying though, because like it loses track of you, and it's like, where are you? You know, like looking all around.
Spins, yeah.
You know, yeah.
That is really cool. Harald, is there anything you wanted to highlight real quick that's making you happy before we wrap up?
Yeah, I've been enjoying spring. I'm in California, so it's been warmer. And did my first camping last weekend, and campfire and guitar playing and everything. So it was really nice actually getting out again. So
Nice.
made me happy.
That's
Good
awesome.
stuff. I think last question before I wrap up, if people do have questions based off this or feedback or whatever, what's the best place to reach out, to get in touch with you, that sort of thing?
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky, Twitter, basically anywhere as Burke Holland. There's no other Burke Holland, so you're good to go. I do spend a lot of time on X just because that generally seems to be where a lot of the AI conversations are had. Reddit as well. And then where I'm behind the social channels, right? So if you just yell at the social channels, we'll see that too.
Yeah,
Cool.
If you comment really nicely on our YouTube, we might just comment back because we want to hear more. So there's a lot of conversation happening on all the channels, and
That's always good
we're
advice.
all there. Yeah.
Yeah, keep your comments relevant and nice. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. I will make sure all those things are linked up in the show notes. We'll also have links to the announcements. If you want to read through the full announcement blog that gets into the stuff we didn't have a time to get into, you can check those out. All right, so let's do what's making us happy. Jack, do you want to go first?
Sure. I just saw the trailer for Star Trek Season 3. Star Trek Brave New Worlds Season 3, or Strange New Worlds Season 3. It looks great. I'm super excited about it. Love that show for the first couple of seasons, and I'm just overjoyed that there's a third one coming out in the summer.
Nice. It's a good one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Is that still like a Paramount Plus thing? Is that where they're at nowadays?
Yeah, the literal worst streaming service app in the history of all time.
Their interface is so bad.
It's
It is
unbelievably bad. Like, I don't understand.
I can't believe they still exist at this point. Like how they haven't just, well, I mean, like the quality of their shows is pretty good, but I'm surprised they haven't caved and just started selling their shows to Netflix or whatever at this point, because it just seems crazy that they're just still trying to do this by themselves.
Well, I think Prodigy, the Star Trek Prodigy show, is over on Netflix. That's
okay.
One for one season or whatever. But what I don't understand is why isn't there like some sort of company, like a third party vendor that just kind of makes white label like streaming service apps and does
UIs
it really, really well. And
Yes.
Why did you make this app? It just sucks.
And there's
sucks
so many of them.
bad.
Like all the cable and satellite providers, they all have terrible interfaces too that are just the worst.
I think you're just spelling out a business opportunity for one of our listeners should get on this.
Exactly.
So you're right though, because everybody just builds the same thing. Like all these apps are
They all
basically
look the
Netflix.
same.
There's a bunch of cards in horizontal rows that you go through, and there's a search box. That's basically it.
That's it.
But the gripe, at least, sorry to digress, but like the one gripe with the Paramount thing is that there's no play from beginning button. It's the stupidest thing. It would be the easiest feature to add. Just play from beginning.
There's also no way to remove something that you've already watched from your playlist. Even though you've finished the series or the season or the episode or whatever, it just stays there. You can't get rid of it.
Some of the content is spectacular. Why did you create like the world's worst streaming application to stream your spectacular content? I just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, Paige, what is making you happy this week?
My new second gen AirPods Pros are making me happy this week. So I had the first gen ones from I think 2020 was when I actually bought them. And recently they finally started giving up. They'd get a little staticky when I'd put them in. The microphones didn't work very well anymore, so I couldn't use them for that. I could just use them for listening. And finally they just weren't working. So bit the bullet, bought the second gen, and so far they're great. They sound even better. They do noise cancellation better. They have smart features where if like you start talking while you're listening to something, it'll turn down the volume or it'll stop whatever you're listening to so you can have a conversation. They've got some pretty neat new features, so I'm very happy with those so far.
So I'm wearing the same right now as we record this, and I mean I absolutely love mine. They're some of the greatest tech. The fact that they have an insane battery life, honestly, and that you can then just put them back in the case to charge them. And like, because we just got back from a trip, so I was on planes and cars and stuff like that. And it's crazy how long they last, how easy it is to switch through different modes. They're really great. My one complaint, though, is those adaptive modes you talk about. I tried those for a while, and I ended up just completely going away from them because the theory of them sounds great. Like, oh, you're listening to something and somebody comes talk to you. But the reality is there's false positives I've found where it will do it when it shouldn't. And then like it doesn't pause. Like it would let somebody talk over you, but it wouldn't pause what you were listening to sometimes. So then you're getting this weird like, oh, what I was listening to is lower, but then I have somebody talking to me, and then my brain just like cannot handle. There's like so many signals coming in, and I don't even know what to do about it.
Yeah.
For me,
also heard that from people like reading reviews of it. They said the same thing.
Yeah, for me, it's walking the dog. Like sometimes I'll be walking the dog, and the dog will be like sniffing at the same spot for like 3 minutes. I'm like, come on, let's go. And then it's like, and then my podcast goes down because it's like, oh, you're talking. It's like, no, I'm talking to the dog.
Yeah.
Like, you know, no need to pause that.
We need AI to solve this.
Right,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem is we're trying to use AI to solve everything, and people are like, this isn't an issue before. Now you're making it one.
Right. Maybe if we had to put an MCP server on the thing, and then that'll solve everything. Well, what's making me happy this week is we just got back from a trip. So checked out the Grand Canyon. I had never been there before, and did a drive through Arizona. Went to Zion National Park.
Oh, nice.
Which was really exciting as well. And I think what is actually making me happy is that a lot of these places we were expecting, because we went during spring break week, so we were prepared for absolute chaos. And it was busy at some of these places, but they were extremely well run. So Zion, for example, has this shuttle system. So we were able to go from our hotel, get like a 5-minute walk to a bus. The bus would take us into the park, and then from within the park, there was this shuttle system that had 9 different stops. So it would take you to spots for popular hikes. There was a lodge there, and the buses came like every few minutes. They were busy, so you were kind of crammed into them, but it was all free. So we just got on the shuttle, checked it out, and it was pretty impressive. So kudos to the people that are working at those places, because we had a good time.
Very cool.
Grand Canyon, big and beautiful. This is what
we found with the Grand Canyon is that you could spend most of your life looking at different vantage points over the Grand Canyon, because you can approach it. Well, it's famously kind of grand, so you can come from different rims and different vantage points. And so we did the most touristy of them. We went to the South Rim. We stopped at a couple of different spots to look. And yeah, it's a humbling experience, because it's
like you just look and you're like, my eyes are generating postcards. Like, what is going on here? This is crazy.
Yeah, we were smart enough to bring binoculars, which is kind of cool, because you could see, at one point you could see one of the trails that headed down into the canyon. and you're zooming way in, and then you pick out a spot that is you think it's a person, it's actually a car, and you're like, how?
Oh, wow.
It's kind of nuts.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Well, awesome. I thought this was a really cool episode talking to the VS Code people. And we're hoping to get more guests involved in the show. I know based off our listener survey, people had asked for that sort of thing. So we're trying to incorporate that more into our flow. If you do have any questions, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can drop them in the comments. We'll make sure Burke and Harald see them. I do want to end the show by, as always, thanking our sponsor, the Blue Collar Coder. You can check out the Blue Collar Coder channel on YouTube. You can also join our Discord. We are also on all the social medias, X, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, all those good things. So you can check those out in the show notes. If you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, we are a podcast that's available on iTunes, on Spotify, your favorite podcast player as well. So you can subscribe there as well. And I think that's all my plugs. So we will be back. If you're watching this on Friday, we will be back on Monday with a new news episode. So you can check that out. And I think that's all I got. So we will see everybody then.
Woohoo!
Yep.
All right.
Thanks for
See you
joining
next week.
us.
Bye.
Or whenever.